In this video, we'll look at another course that I had taken, and I created this PowerPoint from that course. I borrowed liberally from that course, but I'm going to share with you exactly who that person was, what that course was. But I thought it was an absolutely brilliant course for you to see. So what is that course? The name of the course was Conducting Successful Acquisitions, I believe. It was a Coursera, I beg your pardon, it was a LinkedIn Learning course, and the instructor was Mike Figliolo. He's a founder and managing director of Thought Leaders, LLC. And within this course, discussing how do we create, or how do we enjoy a successful acquisition, he mentions 5 particular steps. Those steps are first to identify the targets, evaluate the acquisition, negotiate the acquisition, perform your due diligence, and then finally integrate that acquisition into your company. So let's look at this. So the first step is to identify possible targets for an acquisition. And so as part of those steps, what do you want to do? You want to make sure you have a very, very cohesive strategic fit. You want to make sure that your culture and your company, your business model mesh well with the acquired company's culture, business model. And so you want to make sure that you are, again, look at your organizational structure, look at, are you an innovator, or are you a cost leader? Are you a differentiator? What is the culture of your company? What is the culture of the company that you are acquiring? Does one like to take a risk, whereas the other one is a very staid environment? The second thing is to look at the financial health. So what does finances do, or what do finances do? What does your balance sheet do, or the acquired company's balance sheet, the acquired or company's income statement? So it helps you to understand how feasible, or how viable, which is a better term, is how viable is that company's product and service? Are they making money? What are the types of assets that they have on their balance sheet? How much money did they make? What was their profit? What was their expenses? So to help you understand how economically feasible that target is. And then again, going back to the culture is so incredibly important. Don't forget that Michael Drucker said that culture eats strategy for lunch, that if you cannot change the culture, then if you're looking to do something, if you want to change the strategy, you must also change the culture. If you don't change the culture, then that culture will eat your strategy. And we had an example, I believe, of a person with an arm that was just using and building up that particular arm, but then did not change the culture, did not change the rest of what was going on. And so then that arm came back to its normal shape. So that's a famous example there about how culture affects strategy. The second step is to look at that acquisition. Look at that acquisition with regard to your company, and what is that acquisition going to do for your company? The first thing that you need that acquisition to do is what? To increase the revenue. So revenue is the key word. More than cost efficiencies, more than access to another market, more than access to anything else. Well, I guess you can say that revenue is part of, pardon me, access to another market is part of the revenue, but increasing your sales is the key, not your cost efficiencies, because what the literature says is that those perceived cost efficiencies oftentimes do not pan out. So don't forget that Roger Martin said that 70 to 90% of those mergers and acquisitions are abysmal failures. So revenues being the first, then looking at your cost efficiencies, then looking at your access to new technologies, your access to new markets, your access to new suppliers. So also look at the balance of power that you have or will have between your firm and or the combined firm and the suppliers, the combined firm and the buyers. How does that balance of power shift? Can you have greater balance of power against the buyer or against the supplier as a result of that acquisition? The other thing is to understand exactly what is it that you are acquiring. How are you going to acquire it? And understand what specifically, again, we want revenues, what specifically acquiring that other firm is going to give you. So looking at the risk, so there's always risk. Is the risk involved, the risk incurred, outweighed by the benefits? I believe that Warren Buffett, one of the things that he does when he gets ready to make a large acquisition, he employs a consultant, or he employs someone working there for him. I'm not sure if it's inside or if it's outside, but what does that group, that person or that group of persons do? That group of persons is to come up with reasons why he should not acquire the other company. And so they get a huge bonus if Warren Buffett does not acquire. So what does that mean? He wants someone to point out, this is what it's going to give you. These are what the risks are. This is what we don't see the value in the increased revenues. We don't see increased revenues there. We do not see that the equipment, the assets that you're buying are actually worth what those assets are. We don't see that the customer list is what it is. We don't see that the work is actually as viable, the product is as viable, the service is as viable, and that actually it is not a good use of your money. Do not forget that money, the use of money, is not just the money that you pay. It's not that money that you get out of your billfold and pay. There is more to it. It is the opportunity cost. So if you're spending millions and possibly billions of dollars to acquire another company, what is the opportunity cost of not acquiring a second or a third company there, because you've tied up your money in buying a particular company that is, in the end, that risk did not outweigh that benefit. And so again, Warren Buffett is looking to hedge his bets, looking for someone to say, why is it, or what is it that you think that you're going to achieve? So here are the reasons, bam, 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 why you are not going to achieve what you want. So what are those benefits? So the first benefit is you want to be able to cross-sell your product into the acquired company's customer base. You want to cross-sell the acquired company's products into your customer base. You want to be able, so those two things are doing what? Again, they are increasing revenue. That is the name of the game. That is the first thing that you need to do, is to increase your revenue. And as well, you want to be able to have cost savings. Where are those cost savings? In the management. So in your headquarters, in the real estate, you're going to have to do what? You're going to have to consolidate there. So you do want to have cost savings. You want cost efficiencies in keeping your production lines and your equipment running at full capacity. You don't want them running over capacity. You don't want them running under capacity. You want them to run full capacity so that you can keep that flow going. You want to position yourself so that when you buy that company, or if you buy that asset, what is it that you're doing? You are preventing a competitor from buying that particular company, or from buying that particular asset, or from getting access to that particular market, either from a raw material standpoint or a customer standpoint. As well, you want to do what? You want to make sure that your leverage over your suppliers and your buyers, you want to make sure that you are the one who is taking more of that value in the market, because you are increasing your leverage, your bargaining power over suppliers or over the buyers. And then finally here, we want to get access to new technology, to the new patents, to new ideas, to perhaps new management processes. So there are various items that you will want to acquire, that perhaps buying that company is the only way to acquire it, going back to your patents, for example. And then our third step is to negotiate that acquisition. When you say, well, what does that mean? You say, well, are you buying just the assets? Are you buying the whole caboodle? So the asset deal would be it would reduce the risk, because you're buying only the assets, you're not buying the liabilities. Or do you want to have an equity deal where you're buying assets and liabilities, but more important than the liabilities that you're buying what? You're buying that owner's equity. So you are getting the money that the owners have in the business, and you want that to be a good, profitable business. You want that to be a sizable chunk, because those assets, one of the things when we look at those assets are, what is the condition of those assets? Are they old? How much maintenance do we need to provide for those particular assets? What is their utility? Is it going down, or is it going up? Are we producing more, or are we producing less? So negotiating that acquisition, understanding exactly what it is that you are buying is important. And then once you have negotiated, once you understand what you're buying, then you look at your payment schedule. And so you look at, how are you going to pay? Is it going to be in cash? Is it going to be in stock? Is it going to be a combination? You determine what are the obligations that you have. One of the things that the company that I'm working for at the moment is one of the things is asset retirement obligations. You say, well, what is that? It is the obligation for the company. Normally it comes with something like something that's hazardous to the environment, for example, things that are assets that are extremely long-lived, 50, 75 years, could be 100 years, that cost millions of dollars. It doesn't have to be, but typically they're very high-priced, very long-lived assets. And do we have a contractual obligation, for example, to remediate that land once that asset is being decommissioned? One of the things that you may think of is a nuclear plant, for example, which is an extreme example, but still is, what are the obligations that the company has? And now you are buying those obligations as well. So you need to have a very full understanding of what it is that you are buying. And then as well, do you have holdback? And so what is a holdback? So a holdback is a portion of money, a retention. A lot of times people call it retentions. So that you retain X% of the sale until a particular condition is met. So you determine what those conditions are. Is it sales, for example, or is it production, for example, or maybe there is a new product that is coming on, and that new product is supposed to come on in June of next year. And so you retain a particular amount until that new product does come on. And then looking at the financial package, you determine if top management of the acquired company, if they're going to stay. And if they are going to stay, what are you going to pay them? What's your incentive? What's their severance package? If they work for 2 years, they get X amount of money for severance. What do they want? What do they get as retention as well as a bonus for staying on? Not just their severance, but what are they getting coming on? And so you want to make sure if what you're buying, if the company that you're buying, if you need to have that top management expertise being the key word, scarcity of expertise, you want to make sure that those people are there. You want to treat them as the boyfriend, as the girlfriend. You want them to feel wanted, to feel appreciated. You give them their retention bonus. You give them a very nice severance package because you want to have that continuity of that expertise for those next 2 years, if that's what it turns out to be. And then as well, for the ones who are no longer there, or the owners, you determine what is that non-compete clause, because you don't want the owners to do what? To turn right around and have that same product and start to knowing already who the customers are, knowing what the processes are, perhaps knowing what the weaknesses are of the product, and being able to create another similar product and to overcome those weaknesses. Or to do what? What if you're selling a Cadillac and you have the previous owners come in to sell a Volkswagen Beetle to the same group, because they know there is a large component there of consumers who really don't need all of the Cadillac. They only want the down and dirty, the specifics, that cut down version. So you do need to have a non-compete clause as well. And then our fourth step, you want to perform your due diligence. So you want to look at your financial statements. You want to make sure that the company's financial statements are accurate. You want to look at what are they paying in salaries, what are those benefits there. You look at the equipment that you are purchasing, again, those assets. You don't really want to be spending much money for goodwill. Goodwill is what? The difference between what you pay for a company and what its assets are worth there, what that value is. So you want to make sure, and assets here, I'm also lumping with the owner's equity, but you want to make sure that the equipment that you buy is in good condition, that it's not on its last legs, that it has received its maintenance, and that it is not requiring maintenance now, where perhaps used to be the maintenance was once a year, and now it's requiring maintenance every 3 months. So you want to make sure that that maintenance schedule has not, especially for your key assets, has not skyrocketed. So you want to make sure that the value of those assets that you are buying is correct, as well that intellectual property, those patents, the research, what is it, the new things, the new research and development that's going on. You want to make sure that you have thoroughly evaluated that, looking at what those tests are. Are the tests actually good tests? Do they test what they should be testing? What are the operations? Where are the other subsidiaries, for example, or where are the manufacturing sites? What are the processes there within that manufacturing site? What are the platforms there that may be at the manufacturing site? What are the metrics that they're using? Are they using the correct metrics? Are they trying to, is what they are measuring, are those items the correct items to be measured? And then again, looking at the contracts, what obligations does the acquired firm have contractually? You want to make sure you know exactly what those future obligations are. And then what are some of the common deficiencies that we see. Those common deficiencies are inaccurate financial statements, undisclosed liabilities, again, obligations. Your assets, the assets are not in the state or the condition that they have been purported to be. There may be employee issues where perhaps there are court cases or potential court cases. Have you talked with HR? Is there a possibility of you being sued because now you have bought the company and there was terrible sexual harassment, for example? Or was there some type of embezzlement? Or was there someone, perhaps there was a death or more than one deaths? Or what are the items that are under the surface that might not yet be issues that are out in the open, but they are issues, they are risk, and that may come to fruition, and you may end up being sued for millions and millions of dollars for things that you really did not do. However, you have assumed the liabilities, you assumed the obligations of the company that you have acquired. So those legal issues there. And then finally, what do you need to do? You need to integrate that acquisition. How? What is the best way? The best way is to build an integration team to manage those issues related to the new products. So the products of the acquired company, to manage the markets so the new access or the access to the new markets of that acquired company, to manage the access to the customers of that new acquired company, to manage the relations there between the employees. So you want to make sure that you've got a good HR team. You want to make sure that the wages there, that the company that you are buying, its employees do not make significantly more or significantly less, but either of the two of those, you're going to have to make some type of an adjustment. So you want to make sure that your existing employees and the employees of the firm that you are acquiring, that those mesh well together. So wage is, and to think that people do not know how much someone else is making is a fallacy. So you want to make sure that your wage parity is right. You want to make sure that the culture is right. You want to make sure that the back office operations of platform is right. And how did you do that? You want to communicate. And then what do you want to do after that? You want to communicate some more. So you need to have that group, that integration team, and that integration team really should be started from the very beginning. That integration team should be part of all of the prior evaluations. You want that integration team to feel that they own the process, that they own the new, not to own the employees, not to own the business, but to own the duty, to own the responsibility, to have that as part of their core, what they need to do. So again, communicate, because you do need to do what you need to integrate, and to integrate well. And so according to Mike Figliolo, a poor integration is one of the most costly mistakes during a merger or an acquisition. So don't forget, at this point, at the integration point, your money has been spent, or your top money, your front money, whatever you want to call it, has been spent. But what now is required to be spent afterwards, and how does that affect your opportunity costs? You don't want to be spending, chasing things, chasing costs that you should not have to chase, because there was not the analysis to begin with, that integration team was not part of the very beginning looking at these issues. So poor integration is a killer. Don't forget that Roger Martin says that 70 to 90% of mergers and acquisitions are abysmal failures. We want to be part of the 10%, 10 to 30% that is not a failure, that is truly a success, by integrating that team to manage those issues and to communicate.